Side note, you're picking up a lot of, like, extra noises
Oh,
right now. There's, like, some weird twisting
that's
noise. I
me
don't know what that
adjusting
was.
the cap on a Sharpie because I like fiddling with things.
it was good. I was like, there's some sort of screwing noise going on. Anyway, where are we? Did you say something bad about Yaz?
So I just watched a Doctor Who story that I think has been unfairly and savagely attacked. That is much more fun than its reputation suggests, and is very good. It was called Paradise Towers. But we're here to talk about the episode that aired on Sunday instead.
We're talking about the tsunami consensus, right?
Yes, the tsunami consensus.
Yes. Yeah, the tsunami consensus was an episode of Doctor Who which I watched.
It is interesting to me that this seems to be the point where all of the online discussion I was seeing has suddenly tipped to being much more negative.
Yeah, so I don't think that this episode was like measurably worse than like the Ghost consensus. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it now. Uh, I've been up way too long. So, I don't think it was measurably worse than any of the others, really, but I feel like the fact that it's not measurably better has kind of confirmed some people's priors.
For me, I felt like it was slightly better than the two other, like, Chibnall written episodes since The Woman Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah,
For
I would
just
agree.
slightly better, a slight improvement on both of them. But the thing is, that still brings it out to just being a decent episode. And I feel like looking at the showrunner of Doctor Who and just being like, well, so far he has managed to do a decent episode, is a bit
This
depressing.
might this might be like a 20-minute episode because right now I think we're back into the hive mind mode. Like I
Yes.
did not. I don't even know if I would say I disliked this episode, but it was just yeah. It was an episode. Like I liked it more than last week, and I liked it.
hmm
I liked it more than Rosa actually. I liked more than any but the pilot episode, but that's kind of damning with faint praise.
Yes. Like there were things where I was just like all of the supporting characters felt like characters and they did things and had roles in the story and like they had their own character arcs, but that's kind of just drama 101.
Yeah,
Like
like there was a moment where I realized, hey, he's kind of, giving all of them character arcs, and there's a payoff to all of them. But I kind of think about it more, and I'm like, were they all really necessary? Like, it's drama 101. He operated at a efficient, basic level of storytelling, which is better than
yes.
last week.
Well, the very interesting thing is that it seems like this episode was actually originally, in early stages, was being done by somebody else, and then Chibnall took it over.
Mm.
Which explains why he has so many episodes in the first half of the series.
It would also
But,
explain kind of like the haphazard nature of
yes.
this episode. Yeah, kind of like
Yeah.
last week. There's lots of moments that I really did like, and
hmm
lots of moments where I was like, oh god. Like
Yeah.
it had an ending more or less, so it's an automatic improvement over last week. But
I felt like the ending, for me, the big improvement over last week is I felt like it did do the thing where I was saying that, Ghost Monument had a decent plot, but didn't have any tension or like fun dialogue or anything. It was just competent at doing absolutely nothing, which is a sort of very American procedural kind of television to me,
hmm
where I'm just like, yeah, that Law and Order episode, there's nothing objectively wrong with it, but why does it exist? Whereas Arachnids in the UK was a mess, but the spider bits there was some genuine tension there. There was some genuine like funny dialogue and good character moments. And this episode I think struck the best balance there of the plot made sense, the character moments and funny line like the dialogue felt decent, but it's still just good. It's nothing amazing about it.
I feel like most of my disagreements this week are going to come from comparing it to the Ghost Paradox, whatever the hell that episode was. Because the longer the season goes on, the more I'm like, you know what, episode 2 wasn't that bad. I think I'd give it like half a grade higher. Cause,
the more it goes on, the more I wish I'd committed to it, and in fact, I might even have gone lower with my score. Like, the more, well, for me, the thing is that every episode since then I felt has been better, but has still been flawed. So I feel like the fact that I gave that episode a 6 is messing up my scoring system.
Yeah, I would give it higher than a 6 now. I forget. I think I said 7. I think I'd give it like, yeah, maybe
you gave it a 7.
Still keep it at a 7. Because I maintain that the most tense I felt after the first episode was like the first half of that one. And
well, I would agree. So I think the first like 5 to 10 minutes of Ghost Monument works really well, and then it just immediately loses its tension because the rest of the plot is devoted to a race, except nobody's actually running, and they're all traveling as a group, which is fun fact, not how a race works.
I think the reason why the Ghost Paradox works okay for me is that it wasn't that it immediately fell apart for me. It was kind of a gradual decline from like a height maybe 20 minutes through. It kind of slowly went down, and for this one and Rosa and Arachnids, it was very steep, the fall from this is going pretty well to I'm not enjoying this anymore. Yeah. For this one, it's not quite as steep as like Rosa, where pop song kicks in, and I'm just like, oh god, it's like I had this kind of epiphany about 2/3 of the way through of they've barely shown the alien. I don't know if you felt that way.
This episode overall, I enjoyed it, but there were a couple of moments that stood out to me as being quite weak.
Okay, I might actually be more negative this week because I would say it's more than a couple. Like I would say the general pilot character was useless.
I didn't feel like she was useless. I felt like the actor put a lot of dignity into the character that wouldn't necessarily have been there if they'd been played by a lesser actor.
I thought the actress was fine, but I'm not sure what her role in the story was. So it seemed like her role was she is the pilot, and if she goes down, then that's trouble because she's the pilot, but her brother could also do it.
Yeah, so for me, my complaint there has nothing to do with her, and it has to do with the oddness of the scene where the brother has just suddenly taken over and she's dead off screen.
Yeah.
Surely, just the better way to do it would be to have the last bit be they like come into like a crash landing basically at the base, and she immediately has like a heart failure and dies.
If I were to step into Chibnall's shoes there for a second, I would be afraid that would seem too cliche to like she force ghosted kind of a trope.
There's a reason it's a cliche, and that's that it works better than having the character die off screen and then her brother just be like, yeah, I could have done it all along and had my sister not die of a heart failure.
It does work better. What I would have suggested is, hey, what character you have is super smart and kind of technically gifted? It's the Doctor. This is something I have that's a positive. She was more proactive in saving the day this time around.
I liked her plan, yes. The only bit I didn't like about it, the bit that felt really weird to me, is when she has her big, like, it feeds off energy moment. And I just sat there and I was just like, was that a twist?
Yeah, that seemed like it was played for a twist, and I thought it was like not a reveal or anything, but like just more information, and they seemed played for more drama than I felt like it deserved.
To me, it was just the fact that the moment the creature showed up and it was like devouring bits of the ship, it was going for the life support power systems, it was going for the antimatter. I was just like, yeah, so this is a creature it's feeding off power. Like, it felt so obvious to me that I felt that having that be a twist was silly.
Right. And I felt like they were setting up for a couple of moments with that information. Like the android, who is not organic material, and therefore, material that... Are we going to call this Nibbler, Stitch, or the Pating? I'm going to go with Pating, because I actually kind of like that name. Yeah, so the Pating doesn't eat organic material, and it was trapped in a room with a non-organic material, I don't know, being? Yeah, and it was a being that didn't really have much of a purpose in the plot. So it seemed like the smart idea would be to raise the tension and stakes by having him kill Ronan? Roman? We're just all over the place with names right now.
I don't actually remember that character's name, but
I think it was Ronan, but I'm not 100%.
That seems a bit...
Maybe Ronan. Ronan's a very good actress, so I like Ronan. And a good Taylor Swift song, too.
Yeah, but for me, the android felt like an odd thing where it was not really stressed out exactly what the role of androids in the civilization are, which again comes down to the fact that I feel like one of Chibnall's big weaknesses is that he's really, really not good at world building.
He's not. He simultaneously over-explains and leaves things unexplained in a very bizarre, sort of, kind of impressive way.
Well, to me it feels like he takes several ideas, but he doesn't, he's just like, what if this person has an android? Like, he calls him a consort, but so the only way I can really make sense of it is this disturbing implication that he's just... is the fact that he says he'll be deactivated at the end now that she's dead, is that he's literally a living sentient being who is just there, I can't go into in a PG-rated podcast. Was that the impression you got from that as well?
Well, that would be the connotation for consort. There was that line about, and it's not what you think, and it just seemed weird that there was a line saying, no, that's not what we mean here. But it does seem weird that he would even risk any sort of connotation like that.
It's just weird, because there are plenty of words you can use that aren't consort.
Right. For a moment I thought that there was like an intentional, maybe Roman error going on here, because like it seemed like the general lady was like being written down in their history books, and then I thought that the android was named Ronan and consort. Like, I feel like it maybe vaguely was like a Roman inspired civilization, but that never really materialized. Yeah, that would have made some sort of sense, like a non-zero amount of sense.
I think that the android was one of the cases of it was an interesting idea that I don't think was fleshed out in a way that worked.
I would say that about every subplot in this episode. I mean, all the subplots were like, none of the subplots except for the brother sister.
I was about to say I like the brother sister
were like
one.
bad.
I liked.
Oh, see, that one was my least favorite.
I liked the pregnant man subplot, which was funny because I thought that was going to be the worst part of the episode, and I think it ended up being the strongest part of the episode for me.
Yeah, I really liked the actor. I think the actor put a lot of charm into it. Yeah, I like Graham so much. I like anything with Graham this season. And Ryan got a bit more thanks to that. Yeah, I think probably next to the actual alien, my favorite subplot would have been the pregnant man. And that kind of like Rosa, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, this could go really, really wrong. But like, there's nothing offensive or anything with it. It's very Doctor Who-ish. And I liked, just the cultural exchange of everyone being freaked out by everyone else's.
I also, in theory, so this is gonna tie into one of the things I don't like the thing that probably my biggest problem with it. But I liked, in theory, the way Chibnall connected the pregnant man to Ryan's issues with his dad, which felt very it felt like a case of the sort of thing that Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat did a lot, which is the kind of basic good writing thing of you tie in your characters and themes and the situations together. so they're not just a bunch of disparate things, because then that's really hard to come to some kind of resolution. So that part I felt was a strong idea, but then I really, really did not like the scene where Ryan and Yaz were talking.
Side note, you're picking up a lot of like extra noises right now. There's like some
That's
twisting
me adjusting
noise. I
the
don't know what that
capital
was.
Sharpie because I like fiddling with things.
it was good. I was like, there's some sort of screwing noise going on. Anyway, where are we? Did you say something bad about Yaz?
So there's that scene where Ryan and Yaz are talking, which starts with Ryan talking about his dad, and then the problem with that scene is that it's just Yaz asking a bunch of really unnatural questions that exist solely so that Ryan can give exposition about his backstory. The big one that felt like I was just like, no human being would ever say that, was the "who found her." Like, that line only exists as the setup for the answer being that Ryan did.
Yeah, I think when I first heard that line, I immediately thought of a few different ways that I would have written it, like "Don't tell me you found her" or something like that. That felt a little bit more natural. I
was gonna say what Chibnall should have done. What the most natural way to have that scene go would be to have Yaz ask her initial question about his dad, or about how his mum died, and then have Ryan just talk for a minute or so, rather than trying to make it a back and forth, which requires Yaz asking a bunch of awkward questions. I feel like this is one of those cases where a monologue is much more natural. It would feel a lot better to have Yaz just reacting and just listening to what he says, rather than trying to interrogate him about these obviously emotional events, which just felt really odd.
But if that had happened, then she would have like had maybe half the amount of lines that she wound up with.
Well, that's a whole separate issue.
Poor Yaz.
Yeah.
Right. It's just... Yeah. She's just there to ask questions, and I feel bad. She finally did something that seemed vaguely police officer-ish. She shot the thing with the laser. And punted it down the hallway, which I really enjoyed. That seemed very classic. And when I say something's classic Doctor Who, I mean like season 9.
Not actual classic Doctor Who.
Yeah, not season 9. Sorry, Doctor 9, the next Doctor. Yeah. I'm not that much of a newcomer. But not classic Doctor Who. But yeah, it seemed very kind of this sort of campy, fun Doctor Who that we've been missing when she wrapped it up in a blanket and punted it down the hallway. That was fun. And I saw some people complaining like, oh, this alien that can eat through anything can't eat through a blanket, but that was like one of the few things that was explained.
Specifically went out of the way to say it couldn't eat its way through that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was stunned for just a few seconds, so that's why she had to punt it rather than run it all the way down to the end of the ship or whatever. So, I'll defend you there, Chibnall. Like, that was perfectly fine. Yeah. Good scene.
Yeah, but I feel like Yaz has really been given very little to do, which I think is especially a shame because Mandip Gill is a much better actor so far than Tosin Cole. And I don't know to what extent that's his fault versus, like, versus having to put on an accent and like some of the dialogue he's been given, but she comes across very natural, very like charismatic, and much more capable of carrying scenes than he is. And yet he's given more material and she's given nothing to work with.
I'm just so questioning the decision to make it 3 people for the companions. Like, it's kind of funny, if you go on Reddit, there's lots of people talking about how 3 companions has worked, and if you go to our Gallifrey, they mention Amy, Rory, and River, but if you go to our Doctor Who, they mention Mickey, Rose, and Jackie, and I think that's kind of a funny little schism there. But both of them worked better than this trio.
Yeah. For me, though, it's worth pointing out that I don't think that there's a good question as to whether Amy, River, Rose... I've confused the 2 things now because they're both in my head. There's a good question about...
That's my fan fiction you're talking about.
About whether Amy, Rory, and River would have worked if it had been a season-long thing. And I think it might have, but that's only because Moffat is. It's funny because people keep talking about how Chibnall's strength is in characters, but it's really not. Because I feel like Moffat was much better at succinctly and briefly like giving a stronger sense of a character than Chibnall is. And I think that's what you need when you have a larger cast. You need to be able to establish the character pretty quickly, have them act distinctively different from the other characters, and have a different way of talking and a different way of reacting to things, so that you can immediately have all of the characters working and playing off of each other. Whereas I don't think that Chibnall has the necessary skill level to make that work.
My my take is that he is skilled with characters in that he's good at developing slow developing arcs, as well, at least Broadchurch would suggest that. But what I think is going wrong is I think he made the right decision to make it more than one companion, and then he's kept putting them in episodes that had large casts on top of his already large cast, and he's just written himself into a hole. Like if you think of Let's Kill Hitler, you have the trio, and you have Hitler for 2 minutes, and it's just that. It's actually a small cast episode. But here you've got the trio, and you've got a different trio on top of that one, and it's just too much.
Yes, I can see your point, especially with this one. Though I think you made the same point with Ghost Monument, and there I'd really disagree because there are only 3 supporting characters in the entire episode, and one of them is only in 2 scenes.
Yeah, it's more here than in the Ghost Conundrum. But I do think it was an issue, not an issue, but like it wasn't the smartest move to add 2 more people on top of this very new, untested cast in the second episode. I think that it should have been even smaller than it was, but that's from an episode like 3 weeks ago. It's ancient history. It's like 5 Trump scandals ago.
Yeah, if we measured time in Trump scandals, then everything would seem really slow.
Everything is really slow. Get us out of this timeline.
Yeah, but so my thing is that I think in theory 3 companions can work. I mean it sort of worked at some points in the classic series, but I think even there it sometimes didn't work when the stories were much longer. So I think that in general, I would say that 3 companions is probably too many. I would say that I find that 2 companions is probably the perfect amount for me.
So here's the question. You're the new showrunner starting Series 12. You have to cut one of the 3 companions. Who do you cut?
I think that the issue there is that I don't know how to naturally write a story in which you manage to write out either Graham or Ryan, where you manage to write out Ryan without writing out Graham, because Ryan would be my top choice for writing him out. I mean, honestly, in a real world where I've just taken over Doctor Who next. And I'm now in charge of Doctor Who entirely, I would probably just give myself a clean slate for companions. But which is very which is both cheating and
BBC
unfair
has
to
told
the actors,
you,
and unfair to the actors.
Yes, BBC has told you that 67% of Britain loves this cast, so that means 67% of the cast must stay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how BBC works.
I think Graham is the most likely to leave, even though he's my favorite, because he's a more well-known actor who is also busy doing other things as well. So I think it's quite likely that he's deliberately being planned as a one-series companion, which I think almost makes this current team worse, because I really don't know how it's going to work when it's just the 13th Doctor, if it was just the 13th Doctor, Ryan, and Yaz.
Oh boy. I mean, maybe it would just free up some more time for them, and there would be some addition by subtraction, but I agree. Like, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking same thing
Mhm.
as you, Ryan. But then Yaz and Graham really wouldn't
No, they
work.
just have no.
Like Ryan's whole
I
thing
think
right
they've
now is
literally said
his,
one word to each other or something in the entirety of
they've had
5 episodes.
they've had. Oh man, I thought you were talking about Ryan and Yaz for a moment, and I was like,
No,
well,
no, I
they
was
had a couple
saying
of scenes, but that shows kind
Ryan
of
and
how little
Graham.
chemistry they've got right now,
Yeah,
to be
Ryan
honest.
Yaz and Graham are the two who basically haven't interacted
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, now that you think about it, like, have they said, like, anything to each other? That's really
Yeah,
interesting. It's like, the Bechdel test, except for your companions.
yeah. Um, in fact, it's sort of like I think the most interaction they've had was Yaz asking if he wanted to come in for a cup of tea and him saying no. I think that was the most they've ever interacted.
I think we've actually stumbled across something here.
Yes.
I think we've uncovered something, because if you think about, I almost said Rose, River, Amy, Rory, they all interact with each other a lot. River and Rory probably the least, but still
Yes.
plenty of dialogue between them.
Yeah. Then.
Yeah, but this is like a two relationships with Ryan, and Ryan is the most boring of them all, and yeah, I think that might be one of the bigger issues here, and I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about this
I think
until.
there are a number of reasons why it isn't working, because I've been thinking about it, and it's just like, there's no reason why a three companion TARDIS can't work. Because if you look at Star Trek, the other sort of like long-running science fiction franchise, you have most of the shows have way more than three main characters, and yet generally are able to make it work. So why can't Doctor Who?
I think you're up to 3 out of 5 shows mentioning Star Trek. Actually, no, one of those times is me. I brought up Star Trek Discovery. So together we're 3 out of 5 right now.
Well, it's hard to find other science fiction television shows that have lasted longer than 50 years to compare it to.
Right, it's the most natural double for Doctor Who. I really would argue that a lot of Doctor Who is a personal relationship between the companion and the Doctor, and I think that's a lot of the drama of it, is those 2 or 3 people's evolution in their relationship. And 3 really is a crowd. I mean, not so much Moffat era, more Davies than Moffat, but still with Moffat you get it feels like a more personal connection between the companions and the Doctor than we currently have.
I think it would work better if what it needs to work is more personal connections between the characters, especially between the Doctor and the companions, because there is almost nothing in the way of relationships between the Doctor and the companions right now. The only real sort of relationships between two characters are the Graham-Ryan thing, which is probably the only one of the two that works, and then the Ryan-Yaz, like, friends / maybe they're setting up a romantic relationship, I don't know what's going on here thing.
I will add, every time Graham calls her Doc, I melt.
Great, yeah.
It's one of my favorite things of this series.
They don't really have any. I couldn't really describe their relationship. I couldn't really describe what any of the characters would do in a given situation. I think there's an issue that they're not particularly distinctive in a way that they can obviously play off each other. Whereas I think that traditionally in the past, when you've had multiple character TARDIS teams that work, you tend to have very distinctive different characters. Like, let's just go last series rather than reaching way back in time, because it worked literally a year ago, or a bit more than a year ago, with Bill and Nardole. Like, you're not going to confuse any of Bill's dialogue and Nardole's dialogue. And you've also got Nardole and the Doctor have a very particular sort of like gentleman and butler type relationship, and Bill and the Doctor have a student-teacher relationship. And then, I don't know exactly how to describe Bill and Nardole's relationship, but they've also kind of got one. Whereas, I don't know how I describe the Doctor's relationship to any of the three companions. I don't think there's anything particularly distinctive about the way she interacts with one companion versus the way she interacts with any of the others. The only distinctiveness is Graham's got his little habit of calling her Doc, but I don't think that's enough to build an entire case for a relationship around.
I would argue that the only one of the three that actually seems to enjoy this is Graham, and that seems a little weird because every other season it's been it's very clear that the companion has this need to be with the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, no, this is too dangerous, you shouldn't do this, and eventually gives in. And it's kind of the other way around right now, where it's the Doctor's kind of recruiting them, I think.
There's that scene where they're all like, we want to travel with you, but...
There is, but it didn't really, other than Graham, who I think did most of the talking in that scene, it didn't really feel... Earned isn't quite the word I'm looking for. I think sincere.
Yeah, it didn't really feel sincere. But by comparison to, I'm going to compare it to Russell T Davies now, so that I don't seem like I'm just comparing things to Stephen Moffat. With Rose, just from Rose, you get a sense of what Rose's life is like. You get a sense that it's absolutely miserable and she hates it, and you know why she wants to escape and travel with the Doctor instead of living in the current situation she's living in. But I don't think we get anything of that sort with any of the current companions other than Graham's thing about he doesn't want to be grieving.
Yeah. I mean, Yaz seems like she's got a pretty decent life going. I mean, she's got a nice family, a good new job. I mean, even when we got to see her family, it's I feel like they were trying to explain why Yaz wants to travel, and it didn't feel that. I like that they wasn't a broken home for once, but the flip side of that is, why is she off on these adventures?
She says that her family drives her crazy, but I don't, it doesn't really come across in the scenes with her family.
Yeah, her sister teases her a little bit. That's what sisters do. Her dad's a little weird.
Yeah. She's just she seems to have probably the most healthy family relationship we've ever seen in Doctor Who.
Right.
And she's just I have to leave these people behind. Yeah.
Right. I can get Ryan and Graham a bit more because, where do we go now? Oh, well, this is cool. This is adventures. We can put off the grieving process a bit, but...
Yeah, well, Ryan's got his whole I work in a warehouse and I don't like it thing, which is, relatable. Even though I don't work in a warehouse, but we don't see any of that, and we don't see it inform his character other than 2 lines of exposition about him working in a warehouse.
Yeah. So, to get more specific on this episode, because I think everything we've been talking about is related to this episode, but to get more specific here, I really, really liked the Bettine. I liked the character design. I liked that it wasn't evil. It was...
Yeah.
I call my cat a lot of the times a little shit. And that's what it was. It's just a little shit that ran around the universe screwing things up. And I liked that. I liked that it wasn't, some evil demon that wants to devour humanity or whatever. I don't know.
I also liked that. But so I felt like the Pating was fine, it worked, but it does run into a thing though that I feel like the Pating is probably the best monster from this series so far, and it's still not amazing.
It's not amazing. I liked it though. I liked that it was a little cute.
Yeah,
and
I liked that it was cute. It was fun and it was distinctive, but it's just a thing where Chibnall went out of his way to. I liked it when I first heard the idea, and I know you liked it as well when they were saying that there wouldn't be sort of returning Daleks or Cybermen or Sontarans this series.
Yeah.
And on paper, I was just like, that's a great idea. Yeah, develop some new monsters, some new ideas, be more creative with it. But I just feel like, apart from the Pating, he hasn't really created anything interesting enough to be on
Racism
the
is the
same level
biggest
as.
monster of all. No, I agree. I mean, the Bating is the most distinctive monster, and it's like a
Yeah.
serviceable Doctor Who monster. You know, it's not the Midnight Monster or
Yeah.
the Weeping Angels, but it's like, solid, nice entry into Doctor Who lore, and that's kind of the only one. Like Tim
Well,
Shaw
I
or
feel.
whatever
Yeah.
wasn't the best,
I
but
feel
I mean,
like in general,
hmm?
everything about this episode was like a perfectly good, serviceable Doctor Who episode, which would be fine if this was a Doctor Who just a Doctor Who episode that was kind of one of the guest spot writers in the middle of the season. But this is one of the head writer's episodes, and it's also probably his best episode since the first one.
Yeah.
And it's just like at the same level as at the same level as 42 or Dinosaurs on a Spaceship.
I was gonna say like God Complex, but I think that's actually super
God
underrated.
Complex is actually really good.
Yeah, it's too generous. Yeah, 42. 42 sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I kept thinking was I was super into the Bating story. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that it was a nice mystery of how you're going to figure out how to deal with this thing, and I wanted more screen time to it and less screen time to I think my sister is hiding something. That really just kind of bored me, that whole I have pilot's heart. I don't know what that is, but I have it and it's bad. Like I didn't care at all about what her condition was or if she was hiding anything. I was just like, get back to the little Stitch and we'll be good. And I there was like maybe two scenes where they're trying to figure out how to capture it. It felt like if you were to just edit it down to the scenes where they're trying to get the alien, it would be very anticlimactic, I feel like.
Yeah, I pretty much I kind of liked the brother sister relationship part of it, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually on the more positive side here for once. Uh,
For
but
once, that's like the norm here.
that's the norm, yeah. I was kind of expecting it to flip around. After when we were doing Ghost Monument, I was just like, oh, so this is the new normal. Is Jaden's just like, I
Right.
thought this episode was pretty good. And I'm just like, this episode was awful.
No, we're back to normal
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, we're back to normal now, where I am slightly more positive than you, but we fundamentally agree.
Right. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
most interesting kind of conversation, right? There's very minor differences. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought that I
Sorry.
like I'm trying to think of more specific details from this episode to talk about, and I'm kind of blanking. Like there wasn't too much to it. It felt
Mm.
kind of fillery. I mean, I saw people complaining about things online that I just didn't care one way or the other about. Like people were complaining about the Doctor's speech on antimatter when she gets to the
I
antimatter engine.
I actually liked it just because of the energy that Jodie Whittaker put into it.
Yeah,
It
I'm
felt
gonna
like she was
annoyingly
having
agree.
fun.
Yeah, she seemed like she was having fun. It's just the Doctor being whimsical. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was expedition-y or anything. They were saying it was
No.
like he dumped a Wikipedia article into it. I was just like, no, she's waxing philosophic. She does that.
Yeah.
It
It
felt like a
definitely falls into
normal
the
thing.
pattern of this series trying to be more educational, but I really don't mind that.
Yeah, I didn't have any issue with it. I liked the scene overall, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I know. This bugged me. This bugged me. Um, the Astros, the first dude.
Astos.
Yeah. Uh, I liked him as a character. I liked that the Doctor kind of got put in her place a bit when she's overly selfish at the start, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
calm down, we'll take care of you. But then he gets trapped in the thing with Stitch, and he sends him off, and he has that speech that to
Ooh, yeah.
yeah, to the new pilot, and like 5 minutes in, I was like, oh no, because that speech was terrible.
Yeah. It was just this really odd scene where
It
it
was
didn't
odd.
seem like there was. It just kind of came out of nowhere. It was full of a bunch of platitudes. It also was bizarrely sort of generic and simultaneously didn't actually address what was going on. If that makes
exactly
sense.
how I felt. No, it's exactly how I felt.
Like, yeah.
Where did that come from? And did you even mention the character's name? I think is what I thought. Like, it feels like a plug and play speech, just like yeah, like they went online. It was like generic inspirational speech for someone that's dying, and just copy pasted into the script. You're right. It has nothing to do with the actual events. And about 30 seconds later, they get to the lady who he was talking to, who didn't do anything the rest of the story. And she was like, she repeated the speech. She was like, he was the only one that ever believed in me.
Oh, yes.
And we were like, yeah, yes, we saw that. He told us that. And I forgot about that scene, and now my number grade is gonna be like 2 points lower. Probably.
That scene was really awkward. Not quite as awkward as the "Who found her" line. That's just a whole different level of no human being would say that.
You know, I'm going to disagree because I can see myself being just socially awkward and not being able to think of anything and saying something really, like, bad like that.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it was played like that, so
it wasn't
work.
played like that, but I could see, like, a situation where I would say that for a different reason because I'm an idiot. And I would never see in a million years, even if I was dying and my best friend was right next to me, like, me saying what that character said, or anybody that I know is saying what that character said.
Yeah. And weird that he just suddenly was like, I'm going to give you this really, like, a bunch of Hallmark platitudes now that I'm dying in the space shuttle. I'm not going to tell you anything useful or anything specific. That's the big thing for me, is that I think a lot of what makes good dialogue feel like it works, and what makes things feel like they work in general in writing, is being specific about things. Like, if he'd said something specific about her as a person and why she was, like, if he'd named something specific about her skill set, or been like, do you remember this time that this happened, and then, or something like that, and somehow developed it into something that felt more like an interaction between two human beings, instead of I have to sort of make some kind of last words that sound meaningful, it might have worked.
The problem is that character is never built up before or after that moment.
Yeah. Yes.
So there really
that would be the other problem.
Yeah, there's no way to write that scene without changing any other scenes to make it work, if you ask me.
Yes. You'd need a rewrite of that whole relationship, which I think would not be the worst idea.
It would not be the worst idea. I think it would be one of those things where, first round of editing, Chibnall gives me the script, I'd be like, okay, this doesn't work here. Can you...
Yes.
Nice first draft. Just work on these people and we can go from there. It just... Again, it feels like something that I feel should have been edited very early on.
I feel like we say that every week.
We do, but Chibnall has written in the episode every week, and this seems to be a recurring problem with him. So, we're consistent.
So looking forward to episodes not written by Chris Chibnall, and I believe we will be getting some, but the problem is that we don't know if he'll have a surprise co-writer credit on all of those episodes.
It's going to be anagrams of his name the entire time.
Yeah. Well, supposedly it seems like from the number of writers there were and the number of episodes there are, it seems like there should only be one Chris Chibnall solely written episode left, like just going off the numbers. And I think that logically we can assume that's the finale.
Yeah.
I mean, he might throw us a curveball and write like some random episode and give some other writer the finale, but I don't see that happening.
Right. That would, I welcome that. I'm rooting for it. Just pull a name out of a hat at this point. As long as it's not
Mm-hmm.
J.J. Abrams, I think we're good. But yeah, I mean, I'm going back to what I said in the Ghost Complex of just give somebody that's not Chibin all the reins, and I think that they do fine. I'm not sure how Ryan would work with a different writer. He feels like a character that might just objectively be kind of bland, but I'm still waiting on a guest writer to handle these characters. Like we sort of got it in Rosa, but because he had that credit, I'm not sure. Yeah. Um.
Yeah, I am
And
really just looking forward to someone else handling them. Especially, so the thing for me is that Jodie Whittaker has probably worked the best alongside Graham so far, in that
mhm.
she's not like her dialogue has more spark than the other characters. She performs all her lines really well, but I don't feel like we've seen anything. I don't think she's been given any material that really sort of shows how good of a doctor she can be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, she's gotten like all the average kind of forgettable episodes sprinkled throughout every other Doctor's run, but she's gotten them all in a row, you know.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
She's
There's
got
no. Yeah.
it would be
Like.
like Vampires of Venice was followed by I don't know, Into the Dalek. I'm blanking. I'm actually blanking on forgettable episodes because I think Doctor's been pretty good at avoiding those in the past.
Yes.
And that's the whole
Yeah.
paradox of a forgettable episode is you can't really remember it, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. But I think the thing is, like, by this point, I feel like all of the other doctors had been given stuff that really showed how great they were,
Yeah.
especially all the new series doctors.
Well,
Just
we
going
were
off of
doing
that.
this off record after last
Yes.
episode. Yeah. And I think
And
we got
talking
to the
about showrunner
conclusion.
strengths in general, but I'm thinking
Right.
about in terms of just giving the doctors
Well,
material.
I think when we looked at it, every new Doctor had like one knockout episode by this point already, and a couple
Yes.
had two. Yeah. And we've had the closest thing to a knockout episode was I guess Rosa. Um,
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a toss up for me as to what would be the closest to a knockout because none of them are really anywhere near a knockout for me.
right.
Well,
It's
Rosa for me probably squeaks the closest. Maybe Woman Who Fell to Earth, but even then I'm just like not.
it's
I'm.
kind of like debating which Iron Man deserves the Oscar.
Yeah. I agree, and I'd say that as someone who enjoyed the Iron Man films, but like, yeah, it's that kind of that
I
case
was
of like,
hoping that
yeah,
analogy wouldn't be met with you going like, "How dare you?" um,
no, yeah, like if Iron Man won an Oscar or was nominated even for a Best Picture or Best Director or whatever, I'd be like, what are you talking about? The same way I
yeah,
was with, say, The Martian getting nominated, where it's just like that doesn't make any sense. But
that
let's
that
not
would
get
be.
distracted into emotion
I know.
monologue.
If we get too far down there, it's gonna be a 2 hour episode.
Yeah.
We're surprised it's the Martian review. Um, I mean, I kind of like last week. I feel like the reason why we're a little bit off topic, not too much, is it not a lot kind of happened. Like it's kind of straightforward. I feel like
Yeah.
there was a lot of different
I
arcs, but not a lot of depth
I
to any of them.
I feel like at this point as well, so with the first few we were sort of critiquing the episodes themselves. At this point I feel like we've moved on to kind of critiquing Chibnall as a whole, because there's not
Mm-hmm.
really much else left to do.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
why I'm
because
kind of like, yeah,
the characters are kind of the same as they were at the
yes,
start. Yeah. Um, like yeah, I'm struggling to think of new things this episode has done. It's a lot of the same. Like I'm still bitching about close-ups. Like
mm-hmm,
I'm starting to see the internet take a hold of this, so I think I'm not crazy here. Like
yeah.
there's these weird close-ups, yeah, throughout this season, particularly in like angry dialogue moments that make no sense to me. Um,
I do find it really funny though that back around Ghost Monument, I was kind of making a bunch of points and but the internet was just like, no, this is a wonderful, great episode. Whereas at this point, I'm still making more or less the same complaints I've been making since Ghost Monument, except now all of a sudden the internet has decided that I'm right.
I remember thinking when I was reading through the reactions to the Ghost Emoluments clause, was I liked this episode, and everyone else seems to not have liked it very much. So I don't know. I remember the reaction being kind of negative. The only reaction, other than the pilot, the only reaction that I saw that seemed uniformly positive was Rosa, and I was on the set
I
like
didn't see
descent.
uniformly positive for Rosa. I did see more positive than negative, but I do
Hmm.
think that a lot of that was kind of just relief.
Well, I mean, I saw like positive to mixed, but I didn't see like the negative reviews that I'm seeing
No.
for most of these others.
Well,
Um,
I think part of the problem there is I feel like a lot of the people who were giving who were giving really harsh negative reviews of Rosa were people doing it for, shall we say, ideological reasons, which is a nice way of saying racism.
I actually, to the fan base's credit, I didn't see a single review like that where I thought that that was the explanation. I didn't see any negative review.
I saw one or two, but
One or two.
a lot of it as well felt like it was like trolling in an attempt to generate like to sort of deliberately to create negativity. This
Yeah.
one, actually, I saw a lot of really bizarre internet commentary about Doctor Who being too PC now, which for starters is always rubbish, no matter what the context. But I felt like it was especially odd for this episode.
I
And I
saw one that was like, yeah. Well, I saw a weird one that was like, as an LGBT, I am tired of the
I think I
representation in
saw
this
that one as
series.
well. And I
Yeah.
was just like, what representation?
Right. Like you
Chibnall has
get.
literally been incapable of introducing an LGBT character where he doesn't immediately follow it up by killing off one half of said couple,
Right. I
which
mean,
is
I'm
really,
not.
really an issue, I
I
think.
mean, right. You know me. I'm kind of like almost in the middle here, and even me, I'm like, okay, if the female character says she has a wife, she is gonna die in 10 minutes. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
which is
very bare bones.
yeah.
I'm doing air quotes here. Representation.
Yes. It's really bizarre as well that I saw a lot of people early on, like praising it. They were just like, "Look at this, such great representation." I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?" Like last season, we had Bill, we
Mm-hmm.
had that scene with the Romans, we had all sort like Moffat kept introducing great characters like Vostra and Jenny. I know you have your issues, but I do think it was probably he probably kind of overemphasize that one a little bit, but still, like you had a number of characters and guest characters who were great representation, and
I'm
Chibnall
blanking on her
has
name.
had
Oh,
some dead wives, and that's it.
right. I love Cass from Under the Lake in series 9.
Oh yeah,
Just
she was
yeah.
yeah
Uh yeah, so anyone that's bugging about or that's yeah, complaining about too much like LGBT representation in the series is full of it. I don't want to
yes
be like too political with my take here, but like
yeah
I it's bordering on a criticism for me now that he's kind of just like, here, have a off-screen wife of a character. This character's gonna die, by the way.
yes. It's the fact that both the only two instances I can think of so far both fall into that pattern, and that pattern is also considered considered a very bad trope by a lot of people.
Mm.
That sort of makes it a problem, especially since Chibnall went out of his way to emphasize how diverse this series would be.
Right, and he also gets no benefit of the doubt when his social commentary in Arachnids is so on the nose and forced, you know. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so it's not like he's building up any goodwill when he's trying to do anything vaguely political, and Yeah, I the problems are mounting.
Yeah.
It's not quite a snowball effect, but it feels like there's been a light snowfall, and it's gradually getting worse and worse, and it's pressing on the roof of some structure more and more. This is a terrible metaphor, but um, it's not. It's because no episode have I watched this season, and I've been like, that was terrible. That was In the Forest of the Night. That was Love and Monsters. It's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of a gradual building up of, is this season gonna do anything? You know that meme of like a stick figure carrot guy with a stick and he's poking at something and he says, do something?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
kind of my take right now, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that I feel like casting Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor was the moment where I was afraid that Chris Chibnall was going to write a very bland, boring Doctor Who. And when they were rumoring that Chris Marshall was going to be the Doctor, I was just like, alright, yep, this is it. Strap in for Doctor Who that consists entirely of episodes that feel like generic, that feel like 42 at best. And then when he cast Jodie Whittaker, I was just like, alright, that's a bold choice. That's a good choice. And I was very interested to see where he would go from there, but I feel like the biggest risk and the most interesting thing he's done so far has been casting Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a very good choice. Like, I have to reiterate, like, I really like her. I really kind of feel bad at this point that she hasn't gotten a classic yet.
Yes. Yeah. My big fear here now is that I'm becoming one of those internet meme people who just reiterate, I liked Capaldi, but he didn't have any good scripts.
Right.
Coming immediately after that, I liked Matt Smith, but he didn't really have very many good scripts.
I
Yeah.
scream internally whenever I see someone say that about Matt Smith. But you are, as I said earlier, becoming me after Series 8.
Mm.
Should we start to wrap up? I feel like we could keep going on this, but we were
I
also
feel
have
like we could
something of a
keep
time
going,
limit.
but well, yeah. I mean, it's not. I don't think we have a strict time limit, but
No.
we probably shouldn't
So,
ramble on for like 2 hours, not relating to the story.
right.
Um, And also, if we ramble too much, then we could end up just every future episode is just going to be us repeating ourselves for an hour.
Mm.
Since we're going to have the same issues every time we're talking about Chibnall. Hopefully, not the same issues when we have the guest writers.
If we have the same issues with the guest writers, it's just that's where you hit the panic button or the
Yeah.
protest button. You hit whatever button you need.
Yeah, hit the
If
protest
we get the
button.
same stuff. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite gifs is Matt Smith hitting that button.
You
Um,
actually used the Matt Smith hitting the protest button in our initial article about Chris Chibnall taking over Doctor Who.
I think I did. I think I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a multi-purpose GIF, and if you're
Yes.
technically savvy, which I am not, you can Photoshop a different word on that button if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think final thoughts not a terrible idea because as you said,
Yeah.
we're a little bit at risk of like running out of stuff for next week if we do too much about the season as a whole. If it doesn't change like dramatically.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so final thoughts. I have to decide what score I'm going to give this because I'm
Right.
really not sure. Because I
Oh,
feel like a lot of my issues aren't with. I feel like this episode, as an episode, is fine, and it's
right.
just my issues are primarily with this era as a whole, and with the fact that the problems in this episode are symptomatic of the entire 5 episodes we've had so far.
As is tradition with this podcast, right as I say we should go into final thoughts, I remembered a bigger talking point that I forgot to
Oh,
mention.
yes.
What did you
Big up
think of
talking
the
point.
scene? Right. What did you think of the scene where they catch the Patine with the energy, whatever. Specifically, the whole pick a number and the Hamilton reference moment.
I thought they were fine.
Hmm.
I thought the pick a number bit was actually funny. I liked the bit where she's just like pick a number between 1 and 99, and then she's just like, and she says 51 at random, and then the doctor, and then she's just like, what was that for? And she's just like, oh yeah, the timer, and she's like, I would have picked a bigger number. But
I felt like that was an attempt at like 10 or 11 style whimsy, but it didn't work in that context because she should pick a big number. Like, it, why leave it up to the risk that she would say 10? Like, what would she have said if she had said 8? That seems like a very weird scene to me. I loved the Hamilton reference. I loved that, and I feel like Chibnall was listening to Wait For It too many times, and he was like, "Ooh, I'm into Hamilton right now," and kind of forced a Hamilton reference.
Lin-Manuel Miranda actually retweeted that scene, so
he did. Well, I wanted to make like a snobby. Actually, we don't know if he wrote specifically 51. There's a debate over whether he wrote Federalist 10 or not, but I feel like that would lose our entire viewer, because I could go on about like the historical debate over how much of the Federalist Papers Hamilton actually wrote, and that 51 number being a little bit inflated, but
perhaps that's a better subject for a different podcast where you just ramble about the Federalist Papers for 50 minutes while I try and
Federalist
talk about
Papers.
The Federalist
It's not
Papers
even going to be a
papers.
podcast. Yes, it's going to be a series of essays in the New Yorker where one by one, all 85 essays, I critique them and argue over who wrote them. But anyway, if you, I didn't really care for that scene because it felt like it didn't really work. But it was also like one of the few moments of whimsy in the episode, and I was able to kind of forgive it. But
for me, the thing that worked about it was that I felt like it was one of the few cases where Jodie Whittaker's Doctor sort of was given something a bit more, in that it kind of emphasized that kind of dangerousness of the Doctor in a comedic way, but just in the fact that she just sort of arbitrarily sets a bomb for a plan on a hope that it works, sort of picks a number at random. Which just gives it, like, it's not a dark side on the level of, like, the Colonel Runaway or probably pushing the half-faced man to his death. But it's, like, a nice little moment of kind of, like, the Doctor's not quite,
wild
safe.
Card!
But, yeah. Shall we actually do our final thoughts now?
Yeah, because as tradition goes, we think of one final thing before the final thoughts, after we suggest the final thoughts.
Final thought, and then the other final thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's why it's plural.
So I have no idea what number grade I'm giving it right now. So do you want to go first, or do you have equally no idea?
I kind of have equally no idea, but I'm just gonna go out and I'm gonna give it did I give last week a 7?
Yes.
Because if so, then I think I'll go 7.5, which puts it a bit below what I gave Rosa, but above last week's, because it actually made sense, and I felt like it was in general better managed than last week's.
I feel like I need to put a spreadsheet together to keep track of our scores here so we can stay somewhat consistent.
The problem is that I feel like there's this thing where I'm trying to base my scores off my scores for the other episodes, because that's the only way that they can have any kind of meaning, as opposed to me just randomly shouting out a number. Like, because I've seen some cases where people, like, I was just reading a good review on a blog, I think it's called Downtime. If just to give them a shout out, because I've read it, but they were sort of giving sort of a similar kind of mixed review to what I was saying, and then their consensus was 5 out of 10, which which to me feels like a really harsh grade. So it depends on how you grade episodes, really. So the only way I can think of to do it is to just base it off what did I give the previous episodes. If I liked it more, I give it a higher score. If I liked it less, I give it a lower score.
Just a real quick tangent, the YouTube channel Your Movie Sucks, whenever he does a mixed review, he'll go on about like kind of half likes it, half dislikes it, and I'm thinking 6, 7, and he'll say like 4. And I'm always like, what? Makes no sense. So you're going with 7.5?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 7.5, which is, if you put it in letter grades, that's a C.
A C.
It's
Okay.
a solid middle of the road C, and I think that's very fair.
Okay. I said either last week or a couple weeks ago that my scale is kind of like letter grades, except 6 is the bare minimum to pass. I think I said that about Rosa, and I'm gonna go with a 6 again because I feel like he passed storytelling 101, as we kind of said at the start of this show. Like he got the basic storytelling elements done. Good for you, Chibnall. There was an ending. There was a plot. There was a couple plots actually. Good for you. Challenge yourself. 6.2. 6.2.
Yeah.
And he didn't achieve anything beyond like the basic story. So I'm gonna get 6. That's my semi-arbitrary.
That's
analysis.
perfectly fair by completely arbitrary standards.
Anything else? I feel like we didn't really explain our ratings this time around, but we kind of rambled a bit.
I felt like
I
was saying that in general, it was basically just that it was like that it was a perfectly competent episode of Doctor Who, but it wasn't anything special. And that for me, so it's not that so much that there's anything wrong with the episode in and of itself, as I said, it's just that it feels like a symptom of the fact that Chibnall is not a particularly interesting writer.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm really, really sick of Chibnall episodes, and I feel like next week is going to be so important, and
yes,
it might be the most important event in America this coming week.
Yeah. By the time this podcast goes live, of course, we'll probably know how that's turned out.
Yeah. Well, this isn't going to go up for a few days after the elections, but we are recording it at 8:00 the night before. So if there is no country tomorrow, if there's just riots and flames and
or Donald Trump just comes out of the White House and he's just like, I have good news, everybody. The elections have been cancelled. We are now just going to live under Trumptopia.
So,
yeah.
There's a very real possibility. I'm going to give it a 99% chance that this is the last podcast ever made.